Welcome back, dear listeners, to another episode of Susan LoPresti Wellness, Mind, Body, and Soul, the podcast where we explore the highs, the lows, and everything in between when it comes to a woman's life, her health, and all aspects of navigating the midlife landscape. I'm your host, Susan LoPresti, and I'm coming on today off the cuff because I was thinking about something. I was in the middle of getting ready for my day and I'm ready to walk out the door, and I decided that I wanted to record an episode and I wanted to talk about forgiveness. And I'm sure we all have someone in our lives who have done things to us, hurt us in some way, said something about us, mistreated us in some way. It could be your spouse, because a lot of times those closest to you can do the greatest hurtful things to us, right? Especially in a moment of being angry or upset or something crazy going on. But I think a lot about forgiveness because, and you probably heard this before, a lot of times you forgive somebody else, not to make them feel better, but to make yourself feel better, to actually release that resentment, that anger, that hurt, let it go. Because the other day in my podcast, I was talking about the mind-body connection and how it affects our health. So, when you raise your vibration up and you're living in joy, in abundance, in happiness, in the flow, even if your life is not always like that, even if you just pretend that things are great and you're living in this high vibration, you're attracting. I know you've heard this before, like attracts like. So whatever it is that you focus on, whatever it is that you think about, is what you draw into your life, to your circumstances. So if you are always in the negative about someone who did you wrong in some way, it could have been the littlest thing or the biggest thing. Um, Instead of holding on to that resentment for that person who doesn't even know how much you're suffering and how angry you are at them, especially if you haven't really voiced that to them, right? And they have no idea. They're walking around like life is grand. Meanwhile, you know something that they either said about you or did to you or hurt you in some way, and you harbor that resentment. Now, when you're harboring that resentment and you keep playing it over and over and over again in your mind, which I'm guilty of, by the way, that's why I'm coming on to talk about it. I do it myself, so I know exactly what I'm talking about. But when you finally say, I have to let this go, and either you're going to tell the person themselves straight to their face, I forgive you for what you have done to me. Or you decide within yourself to forgive that person and just let it go. It doesn't mean that you need to be friends with them any longer. It doesn't mean that you're going to have them shit all over you another time. It doesn't mean that you want to be in their company ever again. But letting it go is the greatest gift that you can do for yourself. Forget about them. They're on their own journey. They need to deal with their own healing and learning and whatever else. Their journey is their journey. But for you, letting go could be one of the most gratifying, rewarding, and healthy things that you could do for yourself. And when you let go of that resentment, then you start bringing in a lot of good. And I'm going to talk about my ex-husband right now. I hope he doesn't listen to the podcast, but even if he does, he knows that what I'm going to say is the truth. And that is that when we were married, we had a tumultuous relationship. It was very volatile at times. I mean, he never physically hit me, but verbal abuse could be just as bad, and other, ways that anyway, it doesn't matter. It's water under the bridge. But what I'm here to tell you is that not only, well, I partially did it for my daughter because my daughter already had a difficult childhood. And so I didn't want to make us splitting up even more difficult than the rest of her life had been. So I decided that I was going to make things very peaceful and very easy for everyone to make this transition of selling our house and going our separate ways. And it really was a pleasant experience. And I'm going to take full credit for it because I initiated it. I led the pack of the way I wanted it to be perceived. So for my daughter, I painted the picture for her as it would be a very peaceful environment that we would have, and we would spend time with her father under our conditions, not his conditions, meaning that I wanted it to be an easy transition. I didn't want anyone to be upset. I just wanted to be peaceful. I was all about having peace. And so everything worked out beautifully. We found a buyer for our home. We got a lot more money than I expected to be getting. The whole process went easy. I helped him purchase a house upstate New York. I rented an apartment first, and then I bought an apartment, and everything went smoothly and easily. And I wanted my daughter to maintain a relationship with her dad. And in order for that to happen, I need to have been the person that was going to make it happen. So I was the initiator, and I continue to keep things peaceful and smooth and easy. And anyway, so time marched on, and he moved on and I moved on, and he has a wonderful woman in his life, and I have a wonderful man in my life. And not all the paths have crossed yet. I do cross paths with his significant other, who we're really good friends at this point. And when we hang up from talking on the phone or seeing each other, we always say, "We love you." And I say it to him, and he says it to me. And when he says it to me and I say it to him, I love him as my family member, not as a husband. He's no longer a husband, and he hasn't been for many years. So we're talking, this is years ago that we got divorced. But he is part of my family. And so is his significant other. And I think that it's a beautiful way of being. And a lot of people that I know that here, that I go see him and we hang out, and he texts me pictures of his dog, who I absolutely love. People look at me like I'm half of a nut, and the other people just remain silent, like they have an opinion, but they keep it to themselves. And then I have my ignorant friends who say something negative about him or about me going to see him. And so I know that those people are very small-minded. And I know that not only from that comment, but I also know it for the way they handled their divorce and the way they feel about their ex. And you know what? I don't care how anyone feels about their ex. The bottom line is this: if you had children with that man or that woman, if there's men on here listening, if you had children with this person, they are the mother or the father of your kids. You made that choice to have that child with this person. And now you are a unit. You are a unit. Whether it's a great unit or a terrible unit or a so-so unit, That's the nucleus of your immediate family. And what better way to set an example for your kids than to rise above? Rise above whatever was done, whatever hurt, whatever betrayal, whatever. Rise above it. That is such a huge example that you could be setting for your kids, for the other person that you're rising above to. But you know, the interesting thing with me was when I started to rise above and open up and just be accepting, the one thing that he knew was that I wasn't going to take his shit anymore. That he knew, that he was sure about. And let me tell you something about that. He had more respect for me when he realized that I grew a backbone. I decided that I was going to love myself more than him, and I wasn't going to take his shit anymore. That's when he started to show respect for me. And to this day, he shows me respect. And you want to know something? I show it right back to him. I show it right back to him. I give him the respect that he deserves as being a dad, as fathering a child with me. And of all the things that I went through with this man, I would do every single part of it all over again just to get the greatest gift that he ever gave me in my life, that replaces anything and everything that was negative or bad. And let me go back. There was a lot of beautiful moments. There were many beautiful moments, more beautiful moments than I can count. And sometimes the bad moments like cloud over. But now that there's been so many years of separation and distance and healing that's gone on, I could look at those beautiful moments and have so many beautiful memories that touch my heart that are like the greatest gift. And the greatest gift of that whole entire experience, well, I got a lot of gifts out of that experience, but my daughter, I would marry him 10 times over again and go through everything 10 times over again if I could be guaranteed that I would have my daughter at the end of it all. That's all that matters. And for that reason, I love him in a very special way. It's not a romantic love, but it's a deep love and connection, the way I would have a deep love and connection for any other family member, like my brother, let's say. My brother and I, we have a really cool relationship. We really do. A lot of my cousins, they're my friends. Even though they're my cousins, I would choose them as friends, right? And that's the way I feel about him. He falls in that category. He's not a romantic partner for me. I have the greatest man that I could have ever asked for, who does everything, gives me everything, treats me like the queen that I believe I deserve to be or be treated like. And now I believe that my ex knows that too. And so who healed from this? I did, my daughter did, he did. His significant other has gained a family. She has her own kids and family, but now she has another daughter because she treats my daughter like she's her daughter. And my daughter was staying with them one weekend, and she came down the stairs one morning and she said that she didn't feel well and she was going to go to urgent care. Now, my daughter was 30 years old, and urgent care is down the block from their house. And my ex's significant other said, "Wait for me. Let me get dressed. I'm going to come with you." That's what mothers do, right? So my daughter gained another mom. Does she replace me? Absolutely not. But does she love my daughter? Most definitely. Would she be there for my daughter if my daughter needed her? Hell yes. And with my significant other, my daughter gained a second father. So, do you see how everything just blends into one? So, forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of the greatest gifts that you could give yourself. It's one of the greatest gifts that you could give to the people around you who are feeding off of your reaction to something that may have happened. And how do you want those people to see you? Do you want to rise above and be the better person? Or do you want to get down in the mud with the ugliness that could have, whatever it was that happened that needs forgiveness, right? It could be the simplest thing. They could have said something stupid to you. They could have insulted you. They could have stole from you. They could, there's so many different scenarios. But the bottom line is, no matter how big or how small the offense was, forgiveness is really not for them. You don't even have to verbally tell them that you forgive them. All you have to do is know in your heart that you forgive them. There was a time when he was in the hospital. We were separated. I remember this clearly, though. And it was New Year's Eve. And he was waiting to get discharged from the hospital. And I was nominated to drive him back home. And it was getting later, and I was supposed to go to a party, and it was like 9 o'clock. And he kept telling me, just go home, go to the party. Don't worry. I'll be fine. And I didn't want to leave him. I was like, no, I promised his girlfriend who doesn't drive that I would drive him home to her. And so that's what my commitment was. And at one point, he broke down and he said, I'm sorry. And I said, you don't have to be sorry. It's forgotten. I don't know if he was talking that he was sorry about being stuck in the hospital that night, or he meant that he was sorry for everything that transpired that was his fault, because it all was his fault. But either way, I let him know that it was forgotten. I don't care. I wouldn't have been there if it wasn't forgotten. I got divorced in 2013, but we actually split up from 2008. But it didn't matter about when we got divorced, because from the moment we split up and we moved into separate houses, that's when I sort of just let everything go. I was never happier. I used to put the key in my door at night. Me and my daughter, we lived in a little 1-bedroom apartment. I used to sleep on the sofa, or we would sleep together in the bedroom together. But when I put my key in the door at night and I walked into that cute little peaceful, quiet apartment, it was like I walked into heaven. I loved it. I loved it. And I would always be just so thankful. And I was so thankful that we ended things so peacefully and so beautifully. And to this day, we're close friends. So forgiveness. If you are harboring resentment, anger, anything like that, and you have some kind of a disease, it's going to be very hard for you to recover and regroup and get better when you have negative thoughts in your heart. Yeah, it's like counterintuitive. If you really want to heal and get better and be rejuvenated and just live a long, happy, healthy life, learn to find forgiveness. Learn to forgive those who hurt you the worst. Start with them. You know, the other thing is that I want to say before I let you go is that sometimes you could forgive the person, but it doesn't mean that you need to have them in your life any longer. So you can dissolve relationships and just never speak to them again. And I've recently done that as well with a friend that I had for 40 years. And that feels good too, because you don't need to be in their life. And I probably wouldn't have stayed in his life if he continued to treat me the way he did when we were married, which was just insignificantly. My feelings didn't matter. My desires didn't matter. Nothing mattered. Only he mattered back then. But like I said, he realized that I grew a set of balls. And I stood up for myself the first time ever in that relationship. And he respected me for it. And so you have to stand your ground. You have to have strong will. You have to know yourself. You have to have resolve. And you have to know when things are right and things are wrong. And you have to make a stand and make a statement. Things happen. And if you see that things are being done to you that you just don't like, you could let people know about it and then not allow to participate in that ever again. And I recently did that with another friends group. So I'm getting older and I'm getting wiser and stronger and holding more respect for myself than I ever did before. And I have to tell you, it's empowering. It's motivating for me to just keep on going with this and saying, yes, this is who I am. Don't try and push me around. I will love you. I will honor you. I will respect you. I will treat you with the utmost grace and care, but don't mess with me. And for those who have messed with you, forgive them and then decide, do I still want this person in my life? If you don't, cut them out and let it go. Let it go. Don't harbor the resentment, the anger. It's just going to get in the way of all the good that's waiting to come to you. Back then, I would never have imagined that my life could be as great as it is today. I could have never imagined it. I couldn't even imagine what the next day was going to look like. Never mind imagine that my life would be totally transformed. I would be happy every single day, peaceful, calm, loving, giving, trusting. I was none of those things. I was a basket case. But out of something really trying and really difficult to be in, ended up to be like the gateway to something a million times better. And yet I still have him in my life. I respect him. Like I said, I have a love for him that's not romantic, but a love like I would for any other family member. I want him in my life. I want him in my daughter's life. I want his significant other in my life. I think she wants us in her life. So we're all like happy about it. And that's that. So today's lesson is all about forgiving others. Stay tuned for another episode where I talk about forgiving yourself. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you think that this episode could benefit anyone who you know and love, I would love it if you could share it with them and let them know. If you don't already subscribe to my podcast, please just hit the subscribe button. I get more views that way. The more people that subscribe, the more views. The purpose of my podcast is to get my message out far and wide about midlife women and older looking to reclaim their health, be on a healing journey, enjoying this wonderful time of life. And all of the things that I talk about are ways that you can stay healthy, enjoy your life, live it to the fullest. A lesson like this about forgiveness, about love, about transparency. There's so many things that we could talk about that are going to make you not only a better person, but a happier person and a healthier person. And how else would we want to go through this life, right? Those are our gifts. That's our birthright, is to be happy, to be prosperous, to enjoy, to be loved, to love other people. On that note, until the next time, be well, stay happy, and bye for now. Take good care, everyone.